Hello and welcome back to another IELTS speaking lesson. So this is a new updated lesson and thank you for the feedback from you guys. I've asked you before what sort of lessons you would like, and some of the feedback I got was for extra IELTS speaking lessons. So here it is. Now, if you'd like more lessons in different sections or for different things, please do let me know. I do try and update the course as much as I can. And so this is our first IELTS speaking lesson where I'm going to do some live part 2 speaking topics. So we're going to focus on just a few part 2 speaking topics. We can take a look at the cards. I'm going to show you my quick plan as well, and which I think will be useful for you to see how I would write my plan. And then I'm going to do 2 or 3 minute answers for you. So I hope that you enjoy it. We'll go through these different answers. I would definitely recommend using the subtitles on this video. So if you go to the video toolbar, go and click the subtitles button and you can read along. Okay, let's get started then. Let's have a look at our first Task 2 cue card. Okay, so this first Task 2 cue card is about text messages. And this is quite a common phrase, especially within British English, texting, which means to send messages between phones. I'm explaining that because not all cultures actually use that sort of text feature on the phones. And also, commonly now, people don't really text message as much as they used to, although it's still pretty popular in the UK instead of, say, using WhatsApp or similar messaging services. So first up, this is going to be a bit of a strange one. So I've noted down, I've got the plan in my hand here. I've noted down that I don't really text message anymore. So it's a bit of a hard one to answer in all honesty because I don't really text message much these days, but it's worth saying that. Why not say I don't text, I email? You can talk about that for a little bit too. Really try and tell the whole story. And then obviously I've got some more notes on the actual text message that I find important and useful, which is bill reminders, lucky me. And so that's it really. You can see the plan here. Apologies if the handwriting's not great, but it gives you a real idea about how I write my plan. So let's begin. Here's my 2 to 3 minute answer. Well, in actual fact, I don't really text message that often these days, although when I had my phone, say 10, 15 years ago, I definitely did text message a lot more then. I guess text messaging really isn't that important these days because there are other applications that people use. So it's a little bit difficult for me to think about the most important text because in all honesty, it was a long time ago since I used that feature on a phone. But I would say that one of the most important text messages that I receive on a monthly basis is about my bills. And it's actually about my phone bill. So the company that I use, O2, which is a really famous and large telecommunication company in the UK. They have a service where you can ask them to send you a text message every month. Because to be honest, I'm kind of forgetful. It's really useful for me because, I definitely do forget to pay my bills sometimes. So at the end of every month, they sort of drop me a text and tell me that my bill is due and the amount I owe. I have like a basic package, and then on top of that, I sometimes use extra money, say for data, if I'm using the internet a lot, or maybe some extra calls as well. So the amount they tell me at the end of the month is really useful because then I know exactly what I need to pay with the add-ons. So when I get the text message, I go onto the online payment system and then I just make my payment there for whatever the amount is. I'm pretty sure without this important text message, I'd forget and probably get the service cut off from me. So even though I don't really text people anymore, I'd say one of the most useful services I have is from O2 for my monthly reminders. Okay, let's move on to our second Task 2 cue card. And this is about describing a challenging thing that I have done, or, you have done if you were answering the question. It's a little bit easier to answer this and think about personal experiences. And just note as well, I'm really going to try and describe everything in detail and really try and push the storytelling. So you can see my plan on the screen. I'm going to talk about my teaching qualification. So I've got my phone here. I'm going to set it off for 3 minutes. It's a good way that, you can do this as well. Set the timer for 3 minutes and see if you can talk that long. It might be 2 to 3 minutes, but anyway, let's begin. Well, I'd say this is actually a bit of an easier question to answer than some of the other Task 2 cue cards I've practiced with. So one of the most challenging things I've ever done, and there are a few different ideas that I was thinking of, is probably my PGCE qualification. Now, if you're not sure what that is, that actually means Postgraduate Certificate in Education. So it's a degree that you do after your bachelor's degree, so a postgraduate degree, and it's in education. So my bachelor's degree was in music and new media, production, those types of things, and I really enjoyed it, but I really wanted to teach, and also some of the opportunities that teaching gives you, like traveling. So I decided to go back to university and do my postgraduate certificate in education. And this actually gives you the qualifications to teach in UK schools. I'm actually a primary school teacher and I generally teach year 6 now, which is actually grade 5, but I teach adults as well. So I did the postgraduate certificate in education, the PGCE, and I found the first couple of months were quite easy because it was more theory-based and it was university-based. Then after that, it was a 1-year qualification. After that came placement. So I had to go into schools and take over the class and teach. Now, one of the real difficulties was my mentor, my first mentor at this time, the school that I had was, I don't want to sound mean, pretty awful. She was not supportive at all. In fact, she came back from her holiday, and this is a true story, early. She came back from Portugal to meet me. She wasn't scheduled to meet me. And she said to me, to my face, I want to fail you. I don't want a student teacher. So that really didn't start things off well. And then for the next 3 months, I was basically given a really difficult time. I taught everything and the mentor was really negative about the whole experience. However, I passed everything well. I got support from another teacher at the school and I eventually did get through that placement. The second placement that I had was way better, but it was also a very difficult school in a challenging area. So there were a lot of needs of the families and the students. But my mentor at the next school was amazing and taught me so much about teaching. Really, it was worth it, even though it was difficult to make my way through this situation, because I've been teaching for years and years now, and both in the UK, and I've traveled doing this, and I've had some fantastic experiences. So even though it was such a stressful, difficult time, it was well worth the experience. Okay, you can hear my alarm's gone off there. So I made it to 3 minutes. And in fact, I could probably talk longer for this Task 2 cue card. And you will find that sometimes the different Task 2 cue cards you'll find a little bit easier to answer. But just remember to try and storytell and give as much description using slow and well-pronounced language. You'll be fine. Okay, let's move on to the third question. Okay, this is about a job that you would not like to do. Interesting, because you would have thought that they would have said, what job would you most like to do? So kind of interesting that this is how to answer this one, thinking about a job that you definitely don't want to do. And you can see my plan here. Now, again, apologies for the handwriting, but I'm actually going to talk about being a taxi driver. Nothing wrong with being a taxi driver. Please don't take offense if that's something that you do or a family member does. It's the traffic for me that I couldn't deal with. So I'm going to talk about this. I think I'm going to find it a bit more challenging to do the full 3 minutes, but I'll try and slow my speaking down and give loads of extra details that are of course relevant to the question. So let's begin. Well, in actual fact, there are lots of jobs that I would like to do. And I think all jobs have their own importance. So, I'll give you the answer, of course, but I don't want to sound demeaning or offensive to anybody, or in particular, this type of job. However, a job that I really would not like to do is being a taxi driver. Now, taxi drivers, it can be a pretty cool job, I suppose, because you get to meet lots of different people, you get to have lots of different experiences, and you get to learn a lot about your community. However, I live in a busy city, and there's something that I cannot stand, and that is traffic. Now, I'm a pretty patient guy, especially with friends and family and kids. However, I don't have any patience. I have zero patience for sitting in traffic. So when I do get a taxi, which I actually often do, I'm sat in traffic and I just feel so bad for the taxi driver. It must be so stressful to spend 12 hours of your working woke day sat in traffic, which in the city I live, there is always heavy traffic. But I suppose, it's an easy job in terms of just being sat down, but I would find it so frustrating and also quite boring too. Also, there are a few other things about being a taxi driver that I'm not sure I quite like. The first one being that the hours can be very unsociable, which means that a lot of the taxi drivers that, I've spoken to, they're sometimes working really late into the night. Sometimes they might have scheduled jobs that are in the middle of the night, 3, 4 o'clock, something like that. And also they often work very long hours. Now, I'm not saying it's always the case, but sometimes for all those long hours and the hard work, maybe the pay, the salary isn't quite matched with the amount of work and stress that it involves. However, to be honest, I think it can be a pretty well paid job. The main thing for me is the traffic though. I just could not stand to be sat in traffic all the time. Another issue as well is that you can never guarantee that you would have a nice customer. And remember that sometimes you're going to be sat with them for quite a long time. I know that in the UK, often taxi drivers get a little bit sick of picking up drunk customers who can be a real handful for the taxi driver. So that's something that I definitely wouldn't enjoy. And I know that a lot of taxi drivers try to avoid city centres because of this. So I suppose a taxi driver, although it is a pretty great job, it's definitely not for me. Okay, so I'll stop there. Let me stop that. The examiner would say, there's no alarm, so it's not going to put you off. The examiner would probably, he will or she will sort of say, okay, that's enough. Thank you for the answer. They'll prompt you when it's time. I'm surprised I made it to 3 minutes there because I wasn't convinced I was going to have enough to talk about. But again, just going in detail, stick to the question and really try and explain everything, and just storytell. Be confident, enjoy it, and practice with different cue cards. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. Please do drop me a message if you want more lessons like this, and feel free to listen to it through again and again and write down some of the language I've used and try and use it yourself.